Going full screen here. Hey, welcome to our episode of Tuesday Night Beer School with me, Chad of Chad's Beer Reviews, and we got a special guest this week, Rich from End of the Day Beer Reviews. What's going on,
everybody.
Man? Your channel, you mostly review dark beer on there, and you and I reviewed Bourbon County about a year ago, I think it was.
Yeah, it was a while now.
Yeah. So I know you love stouts. I love stouts. I wrote a whole book about it, or co-wrote a book about it. And I thought you'd be perfect.
So I do. I have my copy right on the
desk. You're just beat up.
It did not travel well.
I thought you'd be a perfect student, quote unquote. Usually I have Christina, but she's busy, so.
No, I'm excited.
Designated hitter or whatever.
Yeah, I am. I'm excited to do it because I love the style. But to be honest, when I do my reviews, it's about just one person's perception of what he's drinking. So I like to know a little bit more about the background of it, and you seem to know all of that.
Yeah. Well, let me bring up the style guidelines here. All right. So, whoops. Sorry, I meant to. How do I do this? There we go. All right, so this is from the BJCP style guidelines from 2021. 20C, category 20, style C. Imperial Stout, traditionally an English style, but is currently much more popular and widely available in America and internationally. Where is a craft beer favorite, not a historical curiosity, which I think if they're going to say that, in the next revision, they should just separate, have an American Imperial Stout and European Imperial Stout, because they're not the same.
No.
Yeah. Overall impression, intensely flavored, very strong, very dark stout with a broad range of interpretation, roasty burnt malt with a depth of dark or dried fruit flavors and a warming bittersweet finish. Despite the intense flavors, the components need to meld together to create a complex, harmonious beer, not a hot mess, sometimes only accomplished with age. That's kind of, I don't know, you're a teacher, I'm a writer, not a hot mess. That seems kind of crass.
Yeah. Yeah, really a little too colloquial for my taste. So.
Comment, sometimes known as Russian Imperial Stout, although I could actually make an argument that Russian Imperial Stout is a separate, like the European style, but anyway. Various interpretations exist. People, if you can pause and read if you want to. Judges need to be aware of the broad range of the style, not try to judge all examples as clones, but yeah, so. Like I've said, like with Imperial Stouts, like some of them are like super fruity, some of them are like roasty and chocolatey, some of them are like super hoppy, like borderline black IPA. So it's really an umbrella style. Which if they have like 20 different IPA substyles, I think they could do a couple of substyles for Imperial Stout.
Yeah, I agree.
We don't need to see about the history. That's where the whole Russian Imperial thing comes from. Scarce ingredients: pale malt with a significant roasted malts or grain. Flake adjuncts are common, like oats, although it's usually more for mouthfeel than taste. American or English ale yeast and hops are typical. I would say American only. If it's English yeast or English hops, I think that's European and it should be a separate style. Ages very well, I agree with that. Increasingly used as a base beer for many specialty styles like Bourbon County.
Yep.
Style comparison: darker and more roasty than barley wines, but with similar alcohol. More complex with a broader range of possible flavors than lower gravity stouts. So our vitals, I don't know if you're not a homebrewer. I don't know if you know about the Gravity OG 1075 to 1115. Like that's like super, like Gravity is like basically like when you put like, you put all your malts in and like you warm them up in the warm water and you drain it. That's your original Gravity. And it's basically like how much sugar is in the water. And like, it's literally like a measurement of like how thick it is. Because like you'll put this little it kind of looks like a thermometer and like it floats, and it's just like the higher it floats, the thicker, the stronger the beer is, and the lower it sinks, it's like lighter, So IBUs, you probably know the international bittering units, 50 to 90, which is really high. SRM is the color, 30 to 40. And ABV, obviously alcohol, 8 to 12. I think they actually made a point of saying somewhere that there's really no upper limit on the ABV.
Yeah, I was going to say that upper limit looks a little low.
Yeah. Although, like, that's just Imperial. Like, it's not bourbon barrel aged because that would be a separate category. Usually, it's really rare you would see a non bourbon barrel aged stout that would be like that high. Except maybe like Dogfish Head Worldwide Stout.
Yeah, that one, or yeah, the Worldwide Stout is or I don't know if you ever had it, Tweak. That was another one that was up in I think that was 17% back in the
Oh, really?
day. So yeah, that one, and you couldn't taste the alcohol, and it was fantastic.
Yeah. They made a point of like having separate commercial examples between American and English. I think they should, instead of saying English, they should just say European, because like there's like Polish and plenty of like other countries are getting into it. Anyway, so we got two of the American commercial examples of the style. These are really ubiquitous. You can get these everywhere. So
just about.
Yeah, the Boulevard Dark Truth Stout. This one is 9.7 ABV, 40 IBUs, and my bottle says it's good until Christmas of next year, which I believe is 2 years out. And you said yours is good
June 25th of 2026 is please enjoy by date for me.
Yeah. So yours is about 6 months younger than mine.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got everybody's favorite North Coast Brewing Old Rasputin, which has been around for, I don't know, at least 20 years maybe.
Yeah, it's forever.
This one is 9% ABV. It doesn't say, 9%. It doesn't say the IBUs. I could look it up on Untapped. It seems, last time I had this, which actually was just a few weeks ago, it seemed very high. I bet it was like, it's probably in the 80s or 90s as far as the IBUs. So,
yeah, I don't remember. And I in all honesty, it's not something I normally check either. So,
all right. So when we're judging beer, we always start with aroma. So, let's start with the Boulevard. So, stick my nose in here. It's had some time to warm up. This is much fruitier than I remember.
This is the first time I've had this one.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm definitely getting that sort of dark fruit, sort of figginess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good fig. Yes.
Yeah.
Almost to me, it has like almost kind of like a jelly kind of smell.
It does. It does. I was thinking sort of like that burnt sugary molasses type of aroma to it.
I think a lot of what that is, I forgot to mention this, is that this beer is actually fermented with Belgian yeast instead of American yeast. And I was just saying off camera, in fact, I'll let the viewers decide, like, since this is fermented with Belgian yeast instead of American, should this be considered some kind of hybrid Belgian American style, or or alternative yeast style or something, So
it has a great nose to it. I really do like this.
Yeah.
Just the aroma that's attached to it.
I'm getting black currants too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely some of that. Again, for me, the thing that's hitting, and it's hitting all through this, the sinus passages, is just like fig, and then either sort of the burnt sugar or a little bit of almost like I want to say it's like a bittersweet or a semi-bittersweet chocolate, like.
Yeah. I was about to say, are you getting roasty like coffee or anything like that on here?
It's funny. I am getting the roast. It's not as pronounced as some that to me, it seems like there's more sweetness to this than anything. It's like I'm almost expecting a dessert type of stout more than anything.
What about the alcohol? This for 9.7.
I'm not getting any.
Yeah, I agree. I thought like this, especially yours is a little fresher than mine.
No, I'm getting nothing. And I've gotten that with some of these stouts where like even at 7%, it's like just a bath of ethanol. But no, this is whatever they've done. They've contained the alcohol quite well.
I'm not really getting much in the way of hops on this one. I think like there's kind of a subtle piney or resiny character, but otherwise, like this is like all malt. The Dark Truth is like all malty, and malty and yeasty. So let's move on to the Old Rasputin.
Okay.
We should mention that I have a fairly fresh bottle. It's about, I think, like 9 months old. And
mine is
about 2 years older than mine.
Yeah, mine's about 2 years old. Mine is it was lost in the Bermuda Triangle of my fridge. So, but it has been refrigerated and properly stored that whole time.
Yeah. So I think, well, when you stick your nose in there, I think you're going to get something totally different.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like, okay, so I have a terrible description. I am not a fan of like a hoppy aroma. I'm getting more hoppiness on this.
Yeah,
I'm not going to
that
use
was
my normal
that was
description.
exactly what I noticed on mine. Because to me, I get like citrusy hops on here. Like to me, this
Yeah.
smells like almost like a black IPA.
Yeah, I was going to say it smells like that that almost grapefruity smell that you
Mhm.
get. For me with an IPA, it's like it's never an enjoyable thing when I get that on a nose.
Yeah, I would agree. I say kind of grapefruity hops, but this also
I
has
hate
like a
to
that
say it, it smells vaguely like cat box.
really.
The hoppiness to it, to me, always sort of triggers that memory. I don't know why. I'm
Well,
sure
some hops do. Yeah, that is like a
but
characteristic of like a lot like Mosaic and some of the
right
like the
about back
Danes.
here as it's
Yeah.
coming down as it goes down the nose and it's, past the tongue, and you sort of get that mixture between the taste and the smell. That's where you get that like, oh, it's time to change the litter box smell, which I hate to say that, but that's really
Is your bottle oxidized at all? Some people get it as cardboard, some people get it as sherry. Mine's fairly
um
fresh, relatively speaking.
I'm getting no I don't get any oxidation on it, to tell you the
Yeah.
truth.
It's funny, because my bottle is probably like a good 9 or 10 months old, and it's, to me, it smells super fresh because it's, like, so hoppy. I don't get
It
any alcohol
doesn't
in this one.
I'm not getting alcohol.
Mhm. I will say it does have a little bit of that kind of black currant character, but
Nothing like the dark truth.
yeah, it's night and day as far as, like, which is good because when I bring up the specs here in a minute, you'll see. Alright, so let's go back to the specs. For aroma, rich, deep, complex, and often quite intense with a pleasant blend of roast fruit, hops, and alcohol. Light to moderately strong roast can have a coffee, bittersweet, or dark chocolate, cocoa, black licorice, tar. By tar, they mean like black currants, or slightly burnt grain quality, sometimes with a light caramel sweetness or toasty maltiness. Man, that's a run on sentence.
Yeah.
Low to moderately strong esters, often perceived as dark or dried fruits like plums, prunes, figs, black currants, or raisins. Exactly what we said on the
Yeah,
dark
yeah,
truth.
on the dark truth.
Very low. They give you a wide range here. Very low to fairly aggressive hops, often English or American in character. Alcohol flavor optional, but should not be sharp, hot, or salty. I don't think they did the word flavor in there. The balance between these main four components can vary greatly. Not all need to be noticeable, but these present should have a smooth interplay. Age can add another dimension, including a vinous or port-like impression, but not sourness.
Hmm.
Age can decrease aroma intensity. Yeah, I agree. It's too bad we don't have like my if we were in the same room together, comparing the aroma of
Just go
mine.
straight swap.
Yeah. All right. So let me bring up the here's our score sheet. So for aroma, remember when you're judging beer, you're judging it based on how well it conforms to the guidelines, not so much how you enjoy it. So for aroma, it's a scale. It's a 12-point scale, which I always thought was weird.
Yeah, that is odd.
For the dark truth, um, I mean, it's right there for everything. I think it's actually like so. Like you start when you're judging, you kind of start like with the specs, and like if it's hitting, then you can kind of add your own personal preference after that.
I'll tell you something. I just went back and I nosed the dark truth again
Hmm.
after the Rasputin. It
Hmm.
it actually changes the aroma of the dark
Yeah,
truth a little bit.
for me, it's very black licorice now,
Yeah.
and or maybe molasses or something.
Yeah, I'm getting more the molasses than the black licorice, and I feel like with the Rasputin, I might have been getting just a hint of the licorice there. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, so, I mean, I like the aroma. I would prefer something a little bit more roasty or coffee-like, but otherwise, it's right there. I'm gonna give this 11 out of 12. I don't think it's quite perfect. What do you think?
I think you're right. Can you? Okay, so real question here. You can
Mhm.
do points on this one, like 0.5,
No, it's gotta be whole
or it's
numbers.
got to be a whole number.
Mhm.
I think I might actually go as much as personally I like this a lot. the Dark Truth, the nose on this, I think I would go more for a 10.
Okay.
It's very good, and it hits a lot of those tasting notes. But I almost want, like you're saying, more of that sort of coffee, and that's not what I'm getting from the Dark Truth at all.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's sort of what I want, is more roast.
Yeah, and then in the North Coast is kind of the opposite. It's like this one's super hoppy. It's very Americanized. It's not. I mean, there's some fruit in there. I mean, but the fruit is like a citrusy hop fruit. It's not so much yeast esters.
Yeah, I mean,
I think this one is like a 10, maybe even a 9.
Okay, yeah, because I was gonna go low on this as well. I was thinking more along the lines of like an 8 or a 9. And quite honestly, I'm glad you corrected me when you were saying, like it's not about personal preference. Because if it was about personal preference, I think I would give it a 5. But yeah, it does conform to some, but I feel like there's just too much. Again, I'm not getting the roastiness. I'm not getting as much of the dark fruit. It's just, it noses more like an IPA to me.
Yeah.
It really does. Which
so
is
going 8 or 9?
you know what? I'll be nice. I'll go with the 9.
Okay. I think I'm going to meet you on the 9. So, by the way, you can always come back and change your score. You're not locked in forever. It's not set in stone. All right. So appearance, well, they're pretty much identical. Kind of that dark brown with ruby highlights. When I poured it, both beers got a fairly big brown foam, and actually, they're both, after I don't know, about 10 minutes or so, the head is still sticking around, which is always a good sign.
Yeah, there's a nice amount of that sort of like lacing on the top. Although, quite honestly, it does look like the Dark Truth is more is thicker, as in appearance. Like as I'm just sort of like, checking the glasses back and forth, and it does look like the Dark Truth. This one is clinging to the glass a little bit more as well.
Are you getting alcohol legs?
What was that? Well, again, that's the thing. Like I expected. I can almost see like a layer of the Dark Truth hanging on after the lacing goes away. Whereas with the Rasputin, it seems it looks thin.
Well, you know why? Because yours is 2 years old. That would probably account for it. And,
okay.
But I can see the clear alcohol is sticking. And also the old Rasputin, it's funny because like the Dark Truth is fresher, so it's like got more of like that alcohol character. It almost has like this kind of like iodine kind of color. And the old Rasputin, because it's so hoppy, like hoppy beers tend to be like super heady. So, and as far as I can tell, they're both very clear. I didn't see like any sediment or anything.
Oh no, I saw no sediment as I was pouring. I didn't pour it through a filter or anything, so I mean there could be something lurking at the bottom. But in all honesty, like even the bottles look. Yeah, it doesn't even look like there's sediment in the bottle when I put it up to a light.
Yeah, I don't think either of these are bottle conditioned. And also, we didn't pour the whole thing out, so you wouldn't have.
Oh, you know what? There is sediment in the bottom of the old Rasputin. If you, I don't know if you can see that, but with a light under it, there's definitely sediment down on the bottom of that one. Let's see about the Boulevard. The Boulevard is completely sediment free. Whereas,
I can't really tell.
Oh, I'm blasting it with like a 3,000 lumen flashlight, so like that just happens to be like I keep in the basement. So I mean, it's the phone's not gonna do it, but you can definitely, at least on the Rasputin, and that might be the age, but there's definitely some sediment in there. So
yeah, even if it's not bottle conditioned, a lot of old bottles you have like a ring of goop on the bottom.
Yeah, I've had that twice where it's been very, very disappointing.
Yeah. All right, so let's check the specs for appearance. Color ranges from very dark reddish brown to jet black, opaque, deep tan to dark brown head. Generally has a well-formed head, although head retention may be low to moderate. High alcohol and viscosity may be visible as legs. They give you quite a range there.
Yeah.
For me, they both hit it perfectly. I see no reason to give anything other than a 3 for both.
No, I agree. I think they both hit that fine.
3 for both?
Yep.
All right. Well, now we get to the best part, flavor. So we'll start with the Boulevard.
Okay.
And Cheers.
Cheers.
Wow.
Yeah,
I haven't
that's
had this
nice.
one in a while.
This is the first time I'm having it. It will not be the last.
It's kind of nice to drink beer at like a more of like a cellar temperature, like a wine temperature, because like you're really getting like no flavors can hide when it's, I don't know, probably 55 degrees or so.
Yeah.
Instead of
I have to tell you, I do prefer, and when I'm in England, drinking the beer at the temperature that the English drink their beer, which tends to be a little warmer than ours. You get so much more out of it. This is, I mean, I'm getting more of the roast. First off, no alcohol burn at all. I don't know about you, but this is going down remarkably easy for what is 9%? What is it,
9.7?
9.7. So this is a pretty heavy hitter, and to me, I haven't even gotten that bloom of alcohol in the belly yet. So
I will say, like, the first thing I noticed was that it tasted just like it smelled, like the black currants, little bit of licorice or star anise, which I'm pretty sure is from the Belgian yeast that they use on here. Yes, like as soon as it hit me, I was like, wow, this is fruity. But at the same time, I am getting like, I'm not getting alcohol burn, but I get a little bit of alcohol flavor. It's like slightly vanilla.
Oh, okay. Is that what you're getting? Like, I get a little of that on the back of the tongue. What I'm getting mostly is that sort of figginess, the dark fruit with sort of the chocolate. More roast than I expected to be in here, to tell you the truth.
I agree. Yeah, because we said that on the nose, like it wasn't like super roasty on the nose, but to me, it leaves a kind of roasty, really dark chocolate aftertaste, like one of those like 95% chocolate bars.
Yeah, and the other thing I'm actually really surprised is there is a good amount of bitterness on the back of the tongue.
I agree. Yeah,
Actually,
like it didn't smell hoppy, but
it's there. I mean, it's not there. At least, again, I haven't tasted it yet, but it's not there the way the nose on the Rasputin seems to suggest it's going to be when we get there.
I kind of have to reach for those hops. Like if you kind of like cluck your tongue to the roof of your mouth, you kind of pull out the bitterness a little. I think
the bitterness is
so,
something that I'm just sort of sensitive to. So, you know, like it's not only is it there for me, but with every subsequent sip I'm getting it's amping up just a little bit. Like it's becoming a cumulative bitterness, which I have to be honest, I'm not thrilled with. So I love the front end of this. The bitterness is a little more than I would have wanted.
And that's interesting because like yours is only 6 months younger than mine. I'm getting like a nice kind of port or Cabernet kind of character to it. I'm not a wine person,
No,
so
me either.
a lot of that I think is just the Belgian yeast. I think it's the alcohol. I will say, like you said, for 9.7, this is super smooth.
Oh, this is dangerous, is what this is. Like you could sit down with a 4-pack of this and not realize if you are not paying attention how devastated your next morning is going to be if you drink them all. So, because this is one of those, like I always call them, like when you can't taste the alcohol, that's a dangerous beer.
You know, a lot of brewers kind of like, and this is a good example of that, is that they kind of ease off the hops because if your alcohol, you can use the alcohol as a balancing because like it just kind of dries everything out. Because I will say this beer, I would definitely describe it as sweet, but it's like miles from cloying. Like this is, it's not like some kind of chocolate, you know, pastry stout or something like that. Like this is, all the flavor here are just all natural. I'm not, as far as I know, they're not using, I mean, they might use like brewer sugar or something, but like they're not adding chocolate or vanilla or hazelnut or anything in here.
No, and you know, that's I sort of even though I'm not an enormous fan of the bitterness that comes along with it, I do really appreciate the flavor on the front end. Like this isn't, you know, would I turn my nose up to this beer and you know, probably never. Do I think they could improve the taste a little bit? I do. I think they could definitely sort of drop that bitterness on the back end a little bit. But again, you know, that's always me, is that, you know, like when you hit that bitterness point, that's where I start to be like,
well, you know. Is it so much bitterness, or is it dryness?
Mm.
They're not exactly the same, but they're kind of
No,
linked
there is a
in.
certain dryness to this also, where like you're, making that click on the top of your roof, the
Mhm,
roof of your mouth. But I don't know. I'm
mhm.
having a hard time figuring it out, which is justification for another one of these. Not right now, but later on.
Yeah. Well, let's take a water break, and then we'll move on to the old Rasputin.
Yeah, I'm so glad that turned out to be what it is, because I've
Yeah,
had mixed success with Boulevard lately.
yeah. I like their, they do a lot of bourbon barrel aged stuff, and most of them are usually pretty good. I wasn't a huge fan of Maplewood, but, um alright, so we're gonna move on to the old Rasputin, which have you had this before?
I have had this before, but it was years ago.
Okay, I seem to have this, like, 2 or 3 times a year, so in fact, I just reviewed this, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, so it's
Mm.
pretty fresh in my mind. Alright, so cheers, Rich,
Cheers.
and we'll try the old Rasputin. Night and day difference.
Yes. Yeah. Night and day difference. And now I remember having this before.
Mm.
Um,
How hoppy is yours?
Very happy.
Yeah, and yours is
Like
a 2-year-old bottle. Mine's 9
yeah,
months.
hops should wear off a bit after 2 years, shouldn't they? Like, doesn't the flavor sort of dissipate a bit?
Yeah.
I think I now remember having this fresh, and
Mhm.
I now know why this bottle was in the back of my fridge. But
Yeah,
yeah, it is. I would take, and not to do the taste comparison, but to me, this is very hoppy, and it's almost like you were saying earlier. I would think if I didn't have the bottle in front of me and the specs on what was on the bottle, I would assume this was more of a black IPA.
yeah, I agree. It's, I think they might have changed the recipe over the years. They might have made it more hoppy to kind of compete with the whole IP, with IPAs and just everybody. They're a West Coast California brewery, so it's
Yeah.
like, how can they not make it, super citrusy? Yeah, we didn't even talk about flavor. I mean, that was the first thing that hit me was it's very grapefruit peel.
Hmm.
It's got a bitterness to it. On the nose, I said, kind of black currants and black licorice, but well, I would say the same thing as in the nose, like the black currants, licorice. I'm not getting like the figginess or plums like
No.
on the other one, but whatever fruity flavor is in here, it's kind of in the background. Like the hops are the star of the show, and the fruits are in the background, and the dark truth is just the other way around.
Yeah, and quite honestly, like it's too hoppy in my opinion on that for what
Mhm,
it's. Yeah, I get it. It's a California beer. They have the
mhm.
like they're the I guess the king of the hops, if you will, when it comes to their stouts and not their stouts, their IPAs. But I would not be happy if I got this. And the other thing is, and now I realize there's a cumulative effect because we've had the Boulevard. Almost immediately, I started to get an alcohol burn out of this one in my stomach, and I don't know if it's
Really?
that I've had 2 sips of the Boulevard, or it's that this just is not doing as good a job of sort of not giving you the alcohol.
I'm
And
not.
then I'm wondering if the bitterness is also sort of the dryness of the alcohol.
Are you sensitive to hops? Because I know some people when they drink IPAs, they get like heartburn. I think it's like a genetic thing. And
I
also, I mean, like, there is such thing as like hop burn, like super fresh IPAs. And I'm definitely getting like I would say I'm getting like a hop, not a burn, but a warmth. Because this is only 9%. And I mean, I would say the alcohol in both of these is pretty smooth, but like because the old Rasputin is like so hoppy,
Mhm.
um,
Maybe
like I'm
that's what's doing it.
yeah.
So I have to like to me what I'm getting here is I'm not getting anything that I expected, quite frankly. Like it's
Mhm,
just the hops have taken over the show. And I think I am sort of sensitive to hops when it comes to the taste of it, but I've never gotten
mhm.
the heartburn or anything like that. It's just always been a flavor that I'm not an enormous fan of.
Yeah. Are you getting
It's just
like
dominating the whole thing.
are you getting any
So
coffee or roast on the old Rasputin?
mm, no.
Yeah, I'm not
No.
really either.
Oh, okay. I was hoping it was because my beer was older that
Mhm,
maybe it had dissipated because coffee sometimes just does just disappear,
mhm.
when you age some of these beers. But I feel like there's nothing but hops. No, I mean like I'm not getting the roast. I'm not getting the coffee. I'm not getting the chocolate. The dark fruit is maybe hidden way behind the hoppiness.
Mhm.
But like I'm also not sure if I'm saying that because or tasting that because you suggested that before, like that there was a hint of the dark fruit. Um, to me, like the center of the show is just the hops.
Yeah.
And it's funny because that burn in my stomach, maybe that is hop burn, and I've just taken that as the impact of the alcohol all these times. Um, to me, it almost tastes. This is going to sound odd, but it almost tastes raw in comparison to the dark truth. Like, have you ever had
Yeah.
the comparison I'll almost always use is Bourbon County, like the 2023 Bourbon County base. I really liked, but I thought it was a little raw. It needed like a year to sit, and now it's beautiful. It
Maybe
is, but that's sort of how this tastes like. But it's already had 2 years in the fridge, so.
yeah, by raw, do you mean like simple? 'Cause like
almost
the
too, almost too hot. Like there's one flavor that's too much. So like
yeah.
for this year's Bourbon County, I felt like there was just a hair too much alcohol as you were drinking it. Like you would get that flavor. Within 6 months, that had mellowed, and you had a nice, very smooth Bourbon County offering.
Mhm.
Here, it tastes like the hops went in yesterday, and whoever
Yeah.
was doing it put in way too much, and it has not had time to
I can't
mature or
even I
dissipate.
can't imagine how you would react to this fairly fresh bottle, you know?
Uh, you know,
Actually
I remember not caring for this beer now from back in the day, thinking, oh, wow,
Mhm.
this is a really hot bottle. Because again, I thought the alcohol was so pronounced. And, like to me, again, it might be that hop burn because, like I feel it each time. And yet I've now had about the same of both the Rasputin and the Dark Truth. And I felt nothing from the Dark Truth, but I'm feeling every sip of
Mhm.
the Rasputin. So.
Yeah. Well, we've gone on a long time. Let's check
Yeah, yeah.
the
Sorry about that. I know I get they literally pay me to
yeah,
talk bell to bell.
yeah.
So, and none has
What do they call
wrong.
it, a lecture? Yeah. Alright, so for flavor, like the aroma, a complex mix of roast fruit, hops, and alcohol. The flavors can be quite intense, often greater than the aroma, but the same warning about balance varying greatly still applies. Yeah, so I mean, like we said, like one was like super fruity, one's like super hoppy.
Yeah.
Medium to aggressively high bitterness. I mean, it does say aggressively high, so I mean, and I think they
That's
actually wrote the
surprising.
guidelines around this beer, Old Rasputin.
Mhm. I did not realize that the high for most of the stouts I drink, they are not super bitter, at
Mhm.
least not the way I'm getting them. So I'm surprised to see aggressively high bitterness in there.
Yeah, I think they should drop aggressively, but the maltiness balances and supports the other flavors and may have qualities of bread, toast, or caramel. The palate and finish can be fairly dry to moderately sweet, an impression that often changes with age. Should not be syrupy or cloying. I agree. Neither of these are syrupy or cloying.
No, not at all.
Aftertaste of roast, bitterness, and warmth. Same age effects as in the aroma apply. So I mean, it's funny if you've been watching my show or this show, Tuesday Night Beer School. When me and Christina did it, we like it seemed like we'd have like two different beers, and like they would both be there, but like for different
Mhm.
reasons, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
that's the thing. Like I was ready to shred old Rasputin. But quite honestly, like according to those standards, it's
yeah,
actually not far off of the mark.
mhm.
But the standards also seem, and again, I'm new to this. They seem remarkably broad.
They did say a complex mix, and I think like that is like because they lead with that, and the Boulevard is much more complex than the old Rasputin.
Oh, I agree.
So I'm gonna go pretty high on this one. I think this is at least an 18. I could maybe even go higher
Yeah,
on a
I was
20
thinking
point
that
scale.
I was thinking a 19 or a 20. I thought the flavor on the Boulevard was pretty much
Mhm.
spot on what they were describing.
Uh, you want to go with 19?
Yeah, yeah, I don't want to.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'd say 20, but you know what? It's definitely not perfect.
Yeah.
Now, but the funny thing is, the old Rasputin is also going to score reasonably well because again, there's a certain, you know, just
Well, I would
broadness.
penalize it because they started out by saying complex mix, and we both kind of said it's just kind of simple.
Mm,
It's like super hoppy, like a little bit of fruit and roastiness in the background. So I'm gonna kind of penalize it for that. But otherwise, it's right there because they did say aggressively high bitterness. I'm gonna say which I think is fair. I'm gonna say 15 out of 20.
Oh, dude, that's perfect because that's exactly what I was thinking.
15.
I was sitting here going, you know what? I think it's a 15.
Mhm,
But again, what's funny is without those standards to look at,
mhm.
I would have hammered this. It
Yeah,
would have been like a 7.
yeah,
But yeah, okay. That's so funny because I was sitting there going, all right, maybe it's a 15. Yeah, but to give it credit, I have not stopped drinking it yet. There is something about it that sort of
mhm.
draws you back to it. Definitely not
Well,
one
you know
I
what? You're a good beer judge then because like you're judging it based on the specs and not how much you like it. Um,
No, the curiosity keeps pulling me back. Like I know I'm gonna enjoy the Dark Truth, and when we're done, I'm gonna finish that one. But I want more of the Rasputin because I'm trying to figure out what the hell is going on. Like it is. Again, I just keep getting kicked in the back of the mouth with the hops.
yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to mouthfeel. So this was just your body and your carbonation. Like, how does it actually feel in your mouth? So just
Okay.
you know, I mean, I would say it's not super thick. I mean, it's definitely up there. I mean, I'd say medium to full, but not like when I think like very full, I'm thinking like Bourbon County, something like
Yeah,
that.
or like an equilibrium or something like that, almost like the
Mhm.
syrupiness of the pastry stout. Even though I know they specifically said not syrupy.
Yeah.
Um, no, it's got a good mouthfeel, and the carbonation level on it, I think, is perfect. As you swallow it, it feels like the carbonation is sort of opening up the flavor, and you're getting some more. Like for me, at least the way my body processes taste, like I get a lot of it on the tongue, but I get a secondary burst of that flavor when I swallow. And like
Mhm.
as I'm swallowing here, you can sort of feel that carbonation sort of reinforcing the flavor. So
Yeah.
I mean, from a crafting standpoint, I think they nailed it. As far
Yeah.
as
So I
you know,
mean, if you're actually describing the mouthfeel, I would say I don't know, is it a full body? I mean, it's at least medium full. Would you say
yeah,
full?
I think it's medium, not quite full. Like I think full, I think more Bourbon County than this. But
Mhm.
again, some people feel like Bourbon County is too thick.
Mhm.
Um, I think I would say medium full, somewhere in that
Mhm.
neighborhood.
Yeah, I
Um,
agree with that, and, carbonation, I'd probably say because it's Belgian, it's a little bit more bubbly than your average imperial stout, so I'd probably say, like, moderately low CO2. I will say it's very smooth. I don't think I wouldn't go as far as say velvety. It's got the
no,
alcohol in there, but it's not oily. It's not,
no, no, it's not
certainly not
velvety.
syrupy.
Yeah, it's no, it's again, it's trying to describe it. There's also a certain dryness to it
Mhm.
with that mouthfeel too. That's I think it's very enjoyable. I like the way I also like the way the flavor hangs out because it does. It's not one of those beers where like as soon as it's out of your mouth, you've lost
Yeah,
the flavor of it. It's staying there and it's still enjoyable. So,
yeah.
what's the score for, or what do we go for out of for
For
carbonation
mouthfeel,
and mouthfeel? Yeah.
it's a 5-point scale. Well, let's do the old Rasputin real
Okay.
quick. Hmm. Now that like I didn't really it's funny, I don't really think about mouthfeel until I'm actually critiquing that metric,
Hmm.
And to me, the old Rasputin actually has like a little bit more body, and it's
Oh,
also a little higher carbonated. So I would probably call the old Rasputin full bodied and like maybe moderately low CO2.
And
Um,
I feel like, okay, so I just poured a little bit. I'm trying to get it on camera, right? The carbonation for me so far has actually been higher than the Dark Truth.
yeah, I
Um,
agree.
and I'll tell you something. To me, it might be the age. It feels thinner. I really
Yeah,
wonder if that might be the age.
that's possible. Yeah, that's pretty normal for cellared bottles to lose the body after a little while. Yeah, so I mean, I would say actually, I kind of have to. You know, it's funny because like carbonation can throw you off.
Yeah.
Because to me, the old Rasputin is definitely noticeably more carbonated than the
Mhm.
Boulevard. And but so like it to me, it makes me think that the body is bigger. Um,
Oh, okay. Maybe
yeah.
I'm confusing it then. Okay. Again, I don't think the way it's drinking. Like when I just did it side by side, to me, I got more of
Mm,
a thicker mouthfeel from the Dark Truth than I did
mhm.
the old Rasputin. But and the carbonation is definitely more aggressive. So I'm having conflicting moments here, Chad. To be honest with
Yeah.
you about it.
I will
Uh,
say neither of these burn.
no,
I
no,
mean,
not
maybe just a slight hop burn on the old Rasputin, but
yeah.
as far as alcohol, it's very smooth.
See, that's the thing. Now that you've brought up this, the phenomenon that I did not know about, the hot burn, I'm starting
Mhm,
to think that's what it is that I'm feeling with it because I'm not getting any of the burn that I normally get with really high alcohol stouts, which normally starts right at the back of the throat and goes right down. You get that nice warming sort of burst. So
mhm.
I'm not getting that from either of them. So maybe that is just the hot burn on the old Rasputin. So
Yeah, the old Rasputin definitely the hops linger on it, and it's funny because
mhm,
like to me the yeast esters, the fruitiness lingers on the Dark Truth,
it does. It does.
which I
I
mean,
think that's why, from a personal perspective, I like the Dark Truth better
yeah.
because that is the lingering flavor.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely. I mean, you can't drink an imperial stout and think it's gonna finish clean like a Bud Light or something.
No,
So,
no. Well, again, I told you this year was a big year for me. I had my first Budweiser and my first Bud Light, and I
mhm,
have to tell you, I found them to be shocking. Uh, I assumed there would be some flavor. Like Bud Light is like drinking a seltzer with
yeah,
nothing in it. And Budweiser, it was like a seltzer that somebody had maybe like poured into a glass that somebody had a beer in once.
mhm,
Like there was just, I just did not get any flavor out of either of those two beers. I
yeah.
expected much more after 50 years of watching the Clydesdales stomp across the TV, and it just was not
No, that's the
very.
whole point. Is they're supposed to be low in flavor. We're getting way, like, way off topic. All right, so
Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I
Mhm,
always do that. My fault.
mhm.
Sorry. All right.
Let's check the specs on mouthfeel. Full, the very full-bodied and chewy with a velvety, luscious texture. Now it's funny because we both said medium full. Um, so I mean, we might have to penalize them for a little, like a little bit
Mhm.
on the body there. The body and texture may decline with age, like you said. You know, what your old Rasputin wasn't quite
I
as
think
thick
that's
as
what
this one.
happened to mine. I really do. I think the age hit it.
Mhm. Gentle, smooth warmth should be present and noticeable, but as a background character, yeah, we both said alcohol is smooth in both.
Mhm.
Low to moderate carbonation. Yeah, I agree. Let me bring up the score sheet here. Um, like I'm gonna go. I think I'm gonna go 4 out of 5 for both because I think the body is like slightly low on both, but otherwise it's right there. What do you
I
think?
have to be honest with you, man. I agree with you.
Mhm.
I don't want to. I want to give the older Rasputin like a 2, just because it's a personal thing. But no, I think you're right. I think the 4 has to be for
You're
both
gonna
of
give
them.
4 for both?
Yeah, I really do. I mean, just like you were saying before, though, like
Mhm.
I'm giving them the same score for such different reasons.
Yeah. Overall, this is sort of your personal preference, but it's
Mhm.
also how well it conforms. I mean, so far both of these beers are hitting or checking off all the boxes or most of the boxes, I should say, but for different reasons.
Mhm.
But to me, the Boulevard Dark Truth is like a little bit more complete or a little bit more, I mean, certainly more complex.
Mhm.
It's to me, it's not perfect, but it's really good. I'm gonna say 9 out of 10. That gives me a total score of 45.
Yeah,
What do you
I
think?
was thinking that the Boulevard would be. I was thinking like an 8. Um,
8?
yeah, I like it a lot. Um, but and I to give it credit, I do think it is. It drinks like a finished beer.
Mhm.
whereas I feel like the old Rasputin doesn't. So
Yeah, to me, the old Rasputin again is this. They could package this as a black IPA or an Imperial
mhm.
black IPA, and like you would have no idea. And but otherwise, I mean, it is as far as the style guidelines go, it's hitting it. So I'm gonna give this one an 8. What do you
Yeah,
think?
I'll go one lower than that because
7?
again, I'll give it a 7. It
Well,
does. It annoys me to give it a score that high, to be honest. So
yeah, it's funny because we're both like I went 1 point higher than you on both of these,
yeah.
but it's also, I mean, you went higher on the flavor for Dark
Mhm.
Truth, but lower on aroma, and
And I have to be honest with you, with the
we're pretty
flavor,
much identical on
yeah,
the old
I was
Rasputin.
close to knocking, Dark Truth up to a 20, but it's not a perfect beer. You know, it's not.
Yeah.
I think it's good. It's not a perfect beer.
Well, you
So
know what it is what you're actually judging is the container in your hand. You're not judging it like as a product as a
mhm.
whole, like in as some kind of meta thing or whatever. So it's always like just whatever, because like a lot of it, unless you got this right off the bottling line at the brewery, like it went through like so many hands before you
Mhm.
got it. Like how it sat in a warehouse and it sat in a store shelf, and like maybe it sat in your cupboard instead of your fridge.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean that's all we have to go by. At least like when you're judging homebrewing competitions, it pretty much went straight from the homebrewer to wherever they're keeping it for the competition, which is usually refrigerated. And yeah, so like it's not 100% the same thing judging commercial versus homebrew. But
Yeah.
anyway, I always ask Christina this. I always say student, which is kind of funny because you're a teacher in real life. Like, what did you learn that you didn't know coming into this?
Well, honestly, I have to be honest. I learned how little I actually knew about the style of beer. I no, and I mean that. Like between your book and actually, I have one other book. I have the Oxford Companion to Beer.
Oh yeah, I
I've
have
been
that one too.
trying. Yeah, I've been trying to learn more about the styles, but I always thought I knew a lot about stouts.
Mhm.
But again, I'm sort of shocked as we go through this that the Rasputin scored as high as it did because it does conform to those
Mhm.
style guides. I also wasn't aware how broad the style was as far as the guides go.
Yeah, and we can criticize the guidelines too, because I think we both kind of in agreement that Old Rasputin is really more of a Imperial Black IPA.
Yeah,
I would like as a personal preference, I want less hops. Give me more roastiness. Give me some coffee, or do
little
what
molasses.
this one does and use like Belgian yeast, and at least you'll get some fruity character out of there. Because I mean, we
Mhm.
both we both described the Dark Truth as being very figgy,
Oh yeah.
and yeah,
It,
I
it,
would definitely recommend you get into try some Belgian quads like Chimay Blue, Rochefort 12, something like that.
I've tried some of them, and again, I feel like I need a summer to just research. No, it's like as you dive into these hobbies, that's the real thing. Like normally, you drink a beer, you think about it as like, how does this taste compared to what I'm eating? But there's so much more to it as you go through. And once you start, I have to be honest, Chet. Once you start talking about yeast, like I am completely out of my depth.
Yeah.
I know baker's yeast for my pizza and my bread, and whatever Pinter sends me when I do my home brewing using that
Mhm.
system. So I had no idea that the yeast had such an impact
Oh yeah,
on the Boulevard. No idea.
yeah.
So
That's the good.
I think it was a
Yeah.
successful lesson though.
It's
I
also the
really
difference between even though these are both ales, it's a difference between ales and lagers. Like consider like almost all German beer is lager, and like it's the yeast is almost has nothing to do with the beer except for like wheat beers, which
mhm.
it's funny because like it's the opposite. Like Hefeweizen, Dunkelweizen, Weizenbach. The yeast is like almost the star of the show in those beers. Um, but yeah, I would definitely recommend. Where is it? I mean, even if you're not a home brewer, you got to get either of these books. How to Brew, or sorry, The Joy of Home. This is Charlie Papazian's book. This is like, and How to Brew by John Palmer. These are like the Bibles of home brewing, and also, I'm like 99% of the questions for the BJCP exam come from these two books. I actually prefer How to Brew better because like he gets like into the specifics like you can skip, like this is more of like a textbook. Well, I mean they're both kind of textbooks, but yeah, like if you're gonna actually take the BJCP exam, um, I'm pretty sure they just draw all the questions from these two books and probably a couple other ones, but like you'll learn about because John Palmer teaches you about like all the different types of malts between like modified versus unmodified, all the stuff about the yeast. I mean, like neither of us are professional brewers, and we don't claim to be.
No.
It's like professional brewers, like so a lot of them have degrees, 4-year degrees in chemistry or microbiology. And it's funny because like they go to school for 4 years or maybe more. And it's just like everything they learn, you can you get the gist of it in these two books. So I definitely recommend these two. Just even if you're not a home brewer, just to like, it at least tells you the basic 101 of zymurgy, which is, the fermentation science. Actually, which is not specific to beer. It's just anytime yeast is fermenting anything, like technically applies to wine, cider, or whatever. But like there's a homebrewing magazine called Zymurgy, and which is all about homebrewing, not wine or cider or mead or whiskey, moonshine.
Yeah, well, I mean, distilling that's a whole nother level.
Oh yeah.
When you start getting into that, and that's too deep a rabbit hole for me. So
yeah,
and too expensive.
Man, I can't believe we went this long. Because like as we were shooting this, I was like, oh, this is gonna take me forever to edit. But I think I'm just gonna upload the whole thing as is, because we're coming up on an hour.
Like, I talk, like that's the thing. I do talk, so
this is basically a podcast. And
yeah, I have to, on my own channel, I have to really like fight not to go off on tangents. So
yeah,
it's
the
just
brilliance
so
of editing.
So yeah, but editing can be such a pain in the butt.
You know what you do is you just live stream. You don't have to edit anything. It's already up there.
Maybe when these come out this year, I'll have to do a live stream on that one. So
yeah. Thanks to Rich from End of the Day Beer Reviews for doing
my pleasure.
this.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll put links to your channel. So check him out if you're not already subscribing to him. And thanks for doing this. And I will see you around.
Yeah, man.
Cheers.
Cheers.